I was going to say, like, it's like barbecue. Of course, there are regional differences, but come on. But no, I would get yelled at about that. You follow my point.
I get you. The same idea, same concept.
Yeah.
Same.
So
I like suya.
Actually,
likes jerk.
vinegar-based barbecue sauce is very distinct about.
Welcome back, y'all, to another episode of Why Y'all Working. I'm your co-host, Michael Ogusanya.
I'm Miller Jameson.
And we have Christopher Wink. Say what's up to the people.
Thanks for having me back. What an honor. I'm hype. I'm ready. I'm coming in energetic.
Yes, sir.
Let's go. So Christopher offered to play his ukulele for the rest of the episode. So we won't stop you.
I prefer the clarinet, actually.
Okay.
So
All right.
I told you the ukulele, but I'm going with the clarinet.
Woodwind.
All right. I love that. I'm a pianist, so this is not my thing.
Wow. Okay.
Keys, my guy.
Got you.
So let's jump into it. Chris is the CEO of Technically, an amazing resource for cities across the East Coast. Let's explain to our viewers what Technically is.
Yeah, I mean, we're a news organization. We are a team of 18 humans, half of whom are actual God's honest full-time journalists who call people on the phone, who pull down CSVs and PDFs and data and put together trends and people stories into narratives that help people better understand complex issues. We publish them on a website hosted in the cloud. We send links to said articles into a newsletter. Our clients are economic development organizations who want their regions better known for their entrepreneurship communities, and service providers who want to reach entrepreneurs, law firms, accounting firms, financial firms, and tech firms that hire people, though it's been a weird 18 months on the hiring side, but they also were long a client mix. So we're a news organization with a community, and we help our clients meet and improve their reputation in that community.
Awesome. So, Chris, you're part of the kind of select group of interviewees that have been doing this for over a decade. A specific business running it really knows the lay of the land. So what inspired you to co-found Technically?
When I answer that question, I always think of it a couple stages. So me and two friends, shout out Brian and Sean, were underemployed recent college grads in the Great Recession. And so step one of what becomes Technically is a blog template that somehow two people who were as nearly as nerdy as I am came together and just started reporting on what was first the Philadelphia and then not long after the Baltimore of flood emerging startup and tech communities. And so that is entrepreneurial, no doubt. But also, as we all kind of admit now, was like we had no other options. We were virtually unemployable. A little bit of experience in the building trades, and the building trades had just been collapsed. So I couldn't even get a job in the building trades in that moment. I was landscaping for cash. I was scrapping together so step one is like there were no other options. So sure, I almost feel like it's easy to like over celebrate that moment. I think there's like a couple other moments later on that I think are actually, now I look back as I had choices. And I think those are more interesting entrepreneurial moments. Maybe not interesting, maybe that's not the right word, but more truly, I had to make a choice. At some point, I was moderately employable, and then I made a choice to stick it out on my own. And that answer why is, I think, one of the hardest challenges that we've created for ourselves in American society is reliable, sustainable, local information that is accessible to people and gives them a better shot at advancing their careers and having their own path to entrepreneurship. And so information provision at a local level to help people get their economic shot is something that animates me.
I love that because, you meet, every MBA grad has the 5-page or, 50-page business plan, this market research, but you and your co-founders came up with something that still is a big problem for people to this day. What are some of the pain points that you're looking to solve, and how has those pain points maybe evolved over time?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's interesting how you frame that. So I have a kind of mentor type figure who long ago said to me, the reason journalism makes for rotten businesses is journalism captures very little of the value it creates. By which he meant almost by design, or at least in most of our cultural expectation, journalism is a thing that we now, to credit the 90s era phrase, wants to be free. And so it's tough to run a pizza shop when you think the best pizza should be free. That's a terrible business. And so people are addressing that in different ways. There's a good chunk, most of the momentum in my trade has moved to what I lovingly think of as the ballet strategy, which is arguing this is a social good, which it is. And so it should be philanthropically supported either at the foundation and charitable level or the individual charitable level. And I think that's very good for a certain kind of local information. But I have always, and 16 years in the wilderness with the haggard expression to match, I still believe it is incomplete to just forego 400 years of fact-based publishing to say it's just going to be crystallized as a philanthropically supported strategy only. I think it's necessary, but I think it's incomplete. And so I have been put literally my entire career at this point into saying we should continue to explore other models. It is a very lonely endeavor because most other ambitious entrepreneurial acts, at least were in growth markets, right? Like if you think of all the impossible swings, I don't know, like space travel or whatever in genetics or even robotics, they all like reflected growth industries. Unfortunately, me and my dummy friends, and then me as my dummy self as I continued on, have stayed very dogged on a similarly challenging but much less lucrative declining part of our economy. So the problem, I think, is important. I think there is some research that you can contribute some of our partisanship back to the decline of local information provision. So there's a lot of things I think are very important. I think it's like core to some of the American experience. But it's boring to a lot of people, is declining in a lot of concepts in some ways. Those are the problems. How you solve for them, which I think was the other half of your question of like, how have the solutions evolved? There's like video of us when we were 22 years old as bratty, but not, I think, far off 20-somethings saying it's dumb to say what is the business model for journalism, because like there's nothing complex about business models at all. It is provide a service and charge more than it costs for you to make. That's it. That's the end. That is every business ever. It's it. And despite what cheap money era venture-backed startup convinced us briefly about, that's every business ever. Pizza shops, event production, window washing. There is nothing else. That's it. Charge more than it costs for you to produce the good or service. That's it. My trade, I think, journalism producers, our leaders mostly grew up in an era when that was such a rock solid business model that was subsidized by Macy's ads. They never had to really think critically about that. And so I think for 40 years or so, we've poo-pooed any experimentation with the model because a bunch of those leaders never had to. And I think some of us, more my peer group, that never got the shot to ever work inside the time in our era when it was growth or got monopolistic margins. We never got that shot. And so for me, I've always just said, we just have to provide a service. And over 16 years, we've experimented with a few different hats, which we can talk to, but they all were me trying to say, how do I ethically and accessibly collect and distribute information in a way that supports some product or service that I can charge more than it costs me to produce. And I don't think that is weird or strange or anything other than how every organization ever has existed for centuries.
And I appreciate you mentioning that. I wanted to touch on the business models and being ethical with that kind of, I guess, approach into figuring out how you can provide information for money when the information is readily available at people's fingertips, but they're just not doing the work to go get it, right? And sometimes that can and will and does take a lot more money than you would think to go get that information. So how have you made that work for you and technically, but also how have you, for the audience, just explain a little bit about how you iterated on that with your friends and then eventually moving forward to with the executive team, et cetera. How has that been for you throughout the couple of years, the 16 plus years you've done that?
And one thing that's like slippery about us is though the product, and if you think of the product as like, professionally verified information that we publish mostly in article format, not entirely, but mostly in article format. If you think of that as the product, that has kind of sort of not changed that much over 16 years. And so in some sense, not changed a bunch, but like how the humans gathering the news and information have gotten paid has changed quite a bit. And that has been like the experiment lab. And I in some sense regret that I've gone through a few phases. There's probably 3 or 4 eras in there. I think that more speaks to how my like trade has just been ping-ponging in the post-nuclear winter that is my industry, if we can call it that. So the simpler narrative is pre-pandemic, it was an events model. That essentially we did things like Baltimore Innovation Week in Baltimore, Philly Tech Week in Philly. We did big festivals in Brooklyn. We were in Brooklyn for many years and in DC. And the model was, well, the news and information is a way to grow an audience. That audience comes out to events. If they are technologists, we get hiring tech firms to pay dollars to be there. If they're entrepreneurs, we get professional services firms, the law firm or whatever, to pay to be there, and they meet each other, which was good and great. It made most sense. But it's hard grind. And leading into the pandemic, already it was clear to me that I didn't really think of it as long-term sustainable. That is most business, that was a lot of business publications. But what you've seen, if you look at most business publications, is and I don't fault them for this whatsoever, they've had to go fully behind paywalls. They've had to get a little bit of subscription revenue and to mix success, but most business publications at national and even some that exist at the local level are mostly that. We have an event strategy, and we try to get a little bit of subscription revenue. I have mostly resisted the subscription revenue side of things because our theory of change has really tried to fight for we want to make information accessible, particularly around entrepreneurship and tech jobs. Basically, I feel like business journalism is really powerful. Business journalism has always been really solutions oriented. Business journalism, I've come to nerdily love business journalism. It's a lot of solutions. It's helping people get their careers advanced. It's helping people make their company better. It's help them understand how the world works. It can be gossip, but a lot of business journalism is not gossip. The reason people clown on business journalism is that it's mostly how to do a thing. It's more how-to guide than anything. It's more instruction manual than it is much else. I like that. So the events was hard. It was a grind to just because the law firm can only spend so much to try to meet a bunch of dweeby entrepreneurs, knowing that only one of them will succeed. It's actually it's hard to make the math. So we were already shifting pre-pandemic. Then the pandemic came. The events model got leveled for a while there. Crushed me, us in a lot of ways. And I moved toward more economic development organizations being kind of a lead financial underwriter, in which we say to them, you don't preview anything. There's no editorial oversight whatsoever, because the actual product is just more awareness of the Pittsburgh tech economy is good for anyone who supports and is responsible for growing the Pittsburgh tech economy. So I more think of it as a university chair being endowed by someone. You don't control what that professor does, but you make sure that professor's doing that research. That's what I think of it as. So that's been the work I'm trying hardest to do. I don't even view it as complete. I very much view still in the work of that. So that's base level client. And then we still do some advertising on top of that, which includes kind of the law firm and the financial services firm and some of the tech hiring. But it's just hard there's not that much money in that market. So that is where we are now. Economic development organizations are a lead financial underwriter with some advertising on top of it.
Thank you for that. And that's great. Michael, do you have anything?
Yeah. So you talked about from working in Brooklyn to DC to Baltimore to Philly. What are some of the unique characteristics you would say of those different environments? Lord knows, Larry, we've seen it. We've used colorful language to describe why we didn't win this or we didn't get this from this person. But what have you seen doing that research in the field from those different environments?
We invented, or no, that's not quite right. All of us collectively normalized the ecosystem metaphor around entrepreneurship. It was an existing metaphor. It's a 100-year-old concept from botany that was first used as a business metaphor in the early 90s, and then gets kind of resurfaced by kind of entrepreneurial types in the early 2000s. That metaphor of ecosystem gets recirculated and used because there were similarities across the country, that there was a kind of entrepreneur that emerges in the 2000s that's either trying to build on the web or trying to build early software, and the existing small business services, which do a lot of good work. Actually, I think the SBA it deserves a lot of credit at the federal level, and SDCs and a lot of small business programs are really good. So don't misinterpret me. Really good. But as for a certain kind of business, and there was this different kind of business. And actually, I kind of identified it. I can remember going to a small business kind of free or subsidized small business counseling seminar in our early days and being like, I don't understand them and they don't understand us, and being 23 years old or whatever, and not even really understanding why none of us understood each other. But now I'm like, oh, it's because you were doing basically an asset light web business that was trying to take on a traditional industry and do it differently. And that is not what small business counseling services are very good at. They're good at saying, like, here's the standard margins you need for your food truck to work. Here's how a restaurant or a barbershop or a warehouse facility operates, which is really good and important because that is a lot of the businesses that we have in our economy. So you need that. So we kind of develop the ecosystem language, and all this terminology starts emerging in the early 2000s, then flourishes in the 2010s because there are similarities. So that's my first way of saying that my initial experience is like, it's super similar because every city had that thing. Everyone was whining about the same stuff. We don't have any capital. There's not enough talent. Everyone's saying the same damn thing. But they were more like, it was lonely and they were finding their peers. And so there are more similarities than differences. There's some nuance. Actually, I was about to make a food metaphor, but I realized every food metaphor I think about, someone would yell at me about. I was going to say, like, it's like barbecue. Of course, there are regional differences, but come on. But no, I would get yelled at about that. You follow my point.
I get you. The same idea, same concept.
Yeah.
I like suya.
Actually,
I like
vinegar-based barbecue sauce is very distinct about.
Got you. And with those, I guess, unique differences, I wanted to touch on that a little bit, and because we all get the same story from all the founders, right? Again, it's what you mentioned: the lack of capital, where the resources, all that, and even more so now that everything is just blown up with the federal government. How do you feel like these unique differences in the ecosystems that you operate in right now are affecting your line of work, and how have you either pivoted or didn't pivot and kind of dove right into that to enhance the reporting that you're doing today?
Yeah, I mean, look, I still believe that most communities, state, local, county levels, haven't fully priced in the understanding of how much their information providers have collapsed. And yes, I mean that as news organizations, but I don't only mean news organizations. I think there's individual creators who can fill some gap. I think there are nonprofits and advocacy groups and even some marketing agencies and marketing work that kind of fills some information gap. There are trade groups and chambers of commerce that there's a lot of institutions that do lots of good information provision. And I do think of very big tent information provision when I think of information. But like anything, I believe that professional storytellers are better than people doing it as a hobby. And that's not a diss. It's just like, yeah, I think professional musicians are better than hobby musicians. Of course, there's overlap, but like, duh. Like, if you're doing it all the time and it's what your trade is, yes, on the whole, you're better than someone who's doing it otherwise. I don't think that's even controversial to say. Of course, duh. So what did you ask me?
Well, how do you feel like the differences in the environments that you're operating in affect your, journalistic preferences today and how you report the information?
Got it. Yeah. So what I was saying was...
You were there.
What I was saying was, I don't think our story is done. 16 years in, I'm still in here, I hope, not because I'm insane, but because I believe this to be a genuinely important thing that I think is harder than people realize. So my point in saying that is, when we talk about entrepreneurship, there's lots of different kinds of entrepreneurship. We're probably talking about a certain kind of tech-enabled, or at least tech-adjacent, or at least like high-growth potential company. But there's lessons across all. There's solopreneurship lessons that involve like retail storefront entrepreneurship, which can, relate to traditional heavy industry entrepreneurship, which can back into other kinds. Every industry is in some stage like a sun of a life or death cycle. You're either growing a sun or you're heading your way to being a black hole as an industry. And so your industry returns tend to look like that, and your level of risk tend to look like that. There are, within reason, like restaurant corridors that the rent and the food margins and there's a consultant you can get who can kind of give you a template and say, like, as long as you can keep your costs, your COGS below this level, you can do fine. And that's it. And you have to just figure that out. And it's still hard, as we know. It's still hard. But like, there's a little bit of a playbook. Even as I sometimes tease some of my SaaS founders that I know well, as much as SaaS still so thinks of themselves as being at the cutting edge, Well, actually, there's a little bit of a playbook now. VC has built that. They actually know this is what AR has to look like. This is what CAC has to look like. This is what LTV has to look like. There actually is a little bit of a playbook. Maybe not at the restaurant level of predictability, but it's there. There's YouTube videos that you can like look up and say, like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And like the industries might be a little bit different, but all to say, in a good way, entrepreneurship follows this pattern of really outsized return when money comes in because it's seen it's like an emerging part of the industry and not everything's figured out and you can kind of run, and a few lucky winners will figure it out faster and there'll be outsized returns. And then when enough capital has been allocated there, efficient market theory, there will be lower returns and there's much less to discover there. And it might be more predictable, but it might also be less likely to have high rates of return. So where you do the business making, which is, I guess, maybe what you're actually asking about, Alaire, and God, I took you on a journey there.
It's okay. I love it.
Where are you going to build the thing? If I'm in Mobile, Alabama, or Baltimore, or Kansas City, or like suburban Wichita, or Tupelo, or whatever, of course there's network effect. You're going to bump into someone who could be your co-founder or first employee or investor at a party or a barbecue or not. A lot of regions have done a lot of hard work to make it easier to bump into people. And there's some network effect around certain industries. Oh, there's a little more quantum over here. There's a little more robotics in Western PA. There's a little more gene therapy outside of Philadelphia. There's a little more health tech near a bunch of health systems like Baltimore and Nashville. There's like some of those network effects and agglomeration effects. But this was a giant journey to say, I think that at the earliest stages, entrepreneurs are more like each other, regardless of industry, than they are like their industry peers. An early stage health tech founder has more in common with an early stage food tech founder than that health tech founder has in common with a hospital system exec, even if they might be in the same industry or whatever. So where you want to be depends a lot on your stage, I think, and less about your industry. And so I think some of the economic development obsession with marketing regions for particular industries strike me as almost like cart before the horse. And I think building ecosystems or entrepreneurial communities are a different thing altogether.
Makes sense.
I answered like 7 questions you didn't ask.
That was deep.
That's deep. To Michael's point, like, I think that there's a lot to unpack there, because just even thinking about like, our own ecosystem, we've been in Baltimore for like a while now, right? I'm not gonna say how many years and age ourselves, but like it's been a lot to see the progression of the entrepreneurship community, knowing that at the end of the day, what you specifically do as an entrepreneur doesn't necessarily separate you from the community that supports you, because once you're an entrepreneur, you're always an entrepreneur as long as you understand the founder journey. If you understand the founder journey of what we go through on a day-to-day, doesn't matter whether you're doing journalism or trying to raise a fund or even, become the next, like medical system, founder. You're doing the same things, maybe not at the same times and varying different times, but we all go through the same types of things that happen to us, whether it be by circumstance or situation, or even, again, talking about what our upbringing, right? And what forces us to kind of change our mindset and really lock in to whatever we're doing, because it's really a passion for us at the end of the day and not just a check, right? Because again, a lot of founders that I've spoken to, have said that outside of the money comes, but it's really about the passion. Because if you don't have the passion for it, if you're not insane about the work that you do, there's no way for you to make it, right? You wouldn't be doing this for 16 years and making technically work if you didn't really love this shit. It would not work out. You would just have to kind of let it go and pick something else, right? So I appreciate you mentioning that, because that riled me up a little bit, because I think about that every day. Yeah.
I mean, truth, right? Like, from my reporting experience, one, the average self-employed American earns less than her traditionally employed peer. So we tend to have a narrative around entrepreneurship. Now, that's true. Self-employment as a category includes lots. If your average, house cleaner, your Uber driver are going to show up in self-employment data through a 1099. But I think even under the subset of like primary owned businesses, even if you're getting a W-2, so you're an employee of your own company, I think, this has been a while to look at this data, but I believe it to be true that even in that case, your average in that subset of self-employed American earns less than her traditionally employed peer. So we have outsized winners in entrepreneurship. That's true. You have like levels of magnitude income and wealth creation that just can't happen in any traditionally employed role. But the way I think of it as entrepreneurship, and when people ask me about entrepreneurship, my reporting and a little bit my own experience, what entrepreneurship does is it removes the ceiling and the floor of your income and wealth levels and your work hour levels. You can work no hours, you can work all of the hours. You can earn none of the money, you can earn all of the money. There's no floor or ceiling anymore. And that means for most people, it doesn't actually work out financially. So typically you have to, or you hope that you're also adding in flexibility reasons. A disproportionate share of women who left jobs in the pandemic era and led an entrepreneurship boom over the last 5 years, and particularly women of color, particularly Black women, led the American entrepreneurship boom over the last 5 years. They were disproportionately in surveys showing they were doing it for flexibility reasons more than income reasons. So that can be a powerful reason that entrepreneurship makes tons of sense. Independence, flexibility, or as you were alluding to earlier, just goddamn passion for the topic. Yeah, I'm in that category. I knew that I always had to I got kids. And so their stakes are real for me now. I can't fuck that up. So there's a level that I can't fuck up, but I am confident enough in what, I'll get a busboy job at Olive Garden if it all went to hell, and I'll make sure my kids are all right. So that's going to be okay. Then I can try to make the earnings that I can, but I believe I'm working on a hard topic. I believe that it matters, and I believe it's my little contribution to the world that I want to figure this out. And along the way, we're creating value for a community, and that's how I piece it together. There's a kind of flexibility, there's a kind of independence, there's a kind of I care about the damn thing, and the financial thing is there. And like every other stupid entrepreneur, somewhere I have maybe this will make financial sense at some point. And I think that's every entrepreneur. When you stare down the barrel of your own mortality, there is somewhere in the American entrepreneur that has that in the back of their head. They are unlikely to reach that in the data, but a few very much will.
If hope could be a KPI in a startup, it might be one of the biggest. Well
said. I think all the Steinbeck line that all Americans are just temporarily embarrassed millionaires, I think that is, every entrepreneur is a temporarily embarrassed billionaire. I think very much rings true.
Yeah. This is my last question, Alair. Feel free to ask after, but just all in line with what we're talking about. We saw AI in these online communities just become such a larger idea, from people trying to use ChatGPT to create their business model. I'll say that probably won't work out, down to people, rewriting SBIRs or finding new nuances or checking themselves with ChatGPT and other generative AI prompts, back to COVID days where Clubhouse was honestly such a big help, I feel like, to building my community. And there's all these different groups, whether it's a DAO or Twitter community, Instagram community. Do you categorize AI and online communities as an overall benefit towards local ecosystems, or that could detract people from those kind of spaces?
Well, I want to split AI and online communities into two different answers.
Fair.
So online communities, I think net good. I believe that, all the research I've ever come across about health is that like-minded human interaction is just the single greatest contributor to our health and well-being. So, if you're super introverted, the super introverted kid who gets friends through Mindspace, hell yes. Or you're homebound for health reasons, and you find a community talking about Real Housewives in a forum. Hell yes. I'm a believer that we haven't fully metabolized that we have been under siege. Some proven, some I just bet on, from Russian, Iranian, North Korean armies who didn't need to invade the United States. They needed to create spam bots and troll farms to enrage us online. I think that my experience with Americans from a lot of different backgrounds as a journalist and a human, polling data even, Americans agree with a lot more than we think we do, a lot more than we say we do. I think online we think we disagree more, and I believe, some of which has already been proven, some of that is we're being pitted against each other. So I believe online communities are a net good. I think that we have been under attack and have been fooled in a way that makes us think we hate each other more than we do, and we've then created some of that hate. So online communities, I think good. It can reinforce what we do in local and in person. That category of artificial intelligence is obviously so big, right? Like we technically have been reported on machine learning companies going back. So that means a lot of things. But like, of course, right now we mean a generation of LLM is the particular technology, and it's from a particular paper, and it's a particular generation that we're talking about right now, man. And I feel ethically, morally, culturally, socially challenged in this right now. Because yes, I am a user. I'm someone who likes to experiment, and I think they're an incredible team of interns that everyone has access to. And I think that's the right framing for this generation. I think the right thing to tell all your friends is every chatbot is an incredible, amazing team of interns you have at your disposal, which means, of course, they would never be your final product. And of course, you check the work. But yes, it is spellbinding if you think of them as an incredible team of interns. But because we're a news organization, I have already gotten some good faith and some bad faith blowback on being too techno-optimist on this, and that there could be a generation of divisiveness. I guess my shorter answer to your question, do I think it's good for local communities? I do think we got our butts kicked by social media in a way that we are not going in this as blinded as we did. If you look back in those 2010s, and I guess I was a contributor to this, if you look back in those 2010s, we were very much like, the tech platforms are all good. And I think a lot of us, even the fans, I think we're a lot less naive than we or our peers were a decade ago. And I think that is good. And so I think the conversation we're having now gives me some hope, though I will get blowback for it and have already, about being techno-optimist. But I believe in us, and I believe that we can navigate this, the generation of artificial intelligence that is coming for us, I believe can harness entrepreneurial spirit that we're seeing right now, and I believe can be net good, if only because we've learned a lot of painful lessons from the social web of the 2010s, from the globalization era of the 1990s and the 2000s. I think we learned some hard lessons, and maybe our politics will be better for it.
Thank you. AI can be a tool. Just to speak about it, generative AI, it can be used by someone to do harm, who wants to do harm. It can allow that entrepreneur to go to that networking event because they're able to knock out all their emails or schedule their calendar in a more efficient way. So I just talked about how Clubhouse was beneficial to me, and I'm sure to tons of entrepreneurs. So thank you for, not piecemealing, not hiding behind your genuine truth, and believing that it can be, a net positive when used correctly.
Yeah. And I did want to touch on something, in terms of, you are a user of AI yourself, right? That you consider them to be basically glorified interns, right? I wanted to ask you and see where your mind goes when you think about how your job as a journalist is affected by the progression of that AI. And when it no longer is that intern and now is that executive editor, how do you see yourself integrating that into your current processes, as far as whether it be, data and intelligence gathering, or even just creation of the works themselves, right? Because you could create a mini you in terms of everything it knows. How would you kind of go about, I guess you could say, innovating on AI for your field and your space, and how you would like to use it best for the good that you're trying to put out in the world?
I think we're in trouble.
Okay.
I do. I have almost 20 years of reporting in technology, which doesn't mean a lot of platform changes, but there are some platform changes in that period. And I try in my reporting to do my best to talk to people and read on other platform errors. So for me, even if you don't take the most Panglossian techno-optimist, this time is different moment, if you just take kind of like, hey, just like other massive platform changes, if you just say, I'm going to just index AI to electricity, things that were massive changes, but like it happened, we digested through it, there was creative destruction, but industries came through. Like, if you take whatever you want to do, if you just take kind of that like high-end transformation change and baseline it against something, don't go all the way to either extreme. Even if you this is the first time in my reporting period, though, that I've like, oh man, this like, it's already changed. It's already has happened. And so in the past, when I've reported on like, 3D printing or even big big data or other generations, early crypto, that in some sense they change things. I never like felt it really. Like I've already felt, right now for this generation, I'm still a better writer. Right now for this generation, like still need gobs of human intervention. But I can see it. I see what anyone sees. I do think we tend to get things wrong, and you tend to like hit a barrier sooner than you think. It tends to not just do the techno-optimist like linear thing of it'll just be, all the way there. You just bump into things. There's a lot of messiness in human systems. So I think you have to focus on the messiness. That tends to be what is always hardest to like recreate. But portions of the reporting job, it's already just gone. It's just changed. So that is going into every leadership conversation we have now. We've already hired a reporter differently for different kind of skill sets, more interfacing with people. We always did a lot of obsessive focus on writing quality. We still care about writing quality, but I think that has sunk in my mind from a top 3 need for a reporter to like a top 10. Like it still matters a lot for like cogency of thought and like some distinctive flair, but I think that's sinking. So we talk internally, there's 3 right now bets that I have in at least a medium term that is going to need. It's hard for me to see how AI will replicate in the medium term. New information, meaning like the information to come from somewhere. So we're investing in editorial products. We've right now we launched in December a map of innovation ecosystems where we gathered some data, put it together, and it's our curation, and it has together a lot of data in scored regions. We're trying to get to being ourselves a data provider. So like we're putting in new information. It's our expertise. So in that sense, that couldn't have been created because there wasn't information. So creating information and people, if we're calling people and they've told us a thing that doesn't exist anywhere, or we have like found information that doesn't exist anywhere, that new information has to come from somewhere for the medium term. So betting on new information, betting on new styles that obviously by definition, this, which is again why I mean, for the medium term, this generation is still by definition, like we are the source. It's us both literally, we are one of many resources, but also my trade is where it all comes from. There's a great analyst that PR firms were like, oh, actually we need earned media more because the LLMs are almost mirroring SEO in that they're indexing news orgs higher. So if you like 3 years ago thought that you didn't care about getting your startup covered by traditional media and you just could write your own blog posts and do your own Twitter threads. Ooh, actually you're wrong, because it turns out the LMs are already indexing earned media at a higher rate because it makes sense. They just want to find value, and you can say anything you want about yourself, but some independent voice saying about you matters more. So actually, even if you don't think anyone reads it, you're going to care about it because we're the source of all the information. In fact, there's information of these. So new information, new styles, and new relationships, by which I mean, I think we're seeing it nursing. There's some version of people are going to want to talk to other people, and how that shows up, where that interface is, might change. But I am betting for a period of time, I won't say how long, but for a period of time, some kind of people are going to want to talk to other people. We thought that every cashier was going to be out of a job 10 years ago. That didn't actually happen. We hit a wall. This is more commonly what happens with technology. Something happens, we go, oh, all the jobs are going to go away. And then like, actually it hits resistance. And sometimes it's regulatory, sometimes it's cultural, sometimes it's technical. Oh, everyone shoplifts. Like you just bump into a thing and then I couldn't actually get to zero. And it reduced and it changed and, but that tends to more often be the story of technology, that the techno-optimist just didn't realize, oh, that was going to be a problem. Oh, I didn't realize that was going to happen. And it didn't actually bumped into friction. So that is still my base case and where I'm trying to lead my news organization. Editorial products, news sourced information. We are no longer trying to be comprehensive. We're trying to get information that doesn't exist anywhere else and focus on relationships, community, that you're there because we're real people and you know us, you are reporters, and we bring together the people you want to be a part of. That's the bet I'm making for our future at Technically.
I love that. And I'll second all of the things that you said, because to me personally, in terms of, when me and Michael have our conversations about AI and how it'll affect, even podcasting or just general entrepreneurship in that sense, that's where it is. Like you can probably dial down VCs to their, discovery process to just being AI. But when it comes down to making that decision, a human is going to have to do that eventually, because it's about the team, right? It's about the story. And that's really what it comes down to, right? You want to understand what's new versus what's past. Yes, that's important, right? But if you have new information that changes the past information, that's arguably way more important than what you just figured out. Because to be honest, you're going to now move on that new information versus moving off of the old information, especially if it's different and completely newfound, right? So I definitely, appreciate you mentioning that. And the entrepreneurs are very resourceful in a lot of different ways. We're optimists on a lot of different things and technologies, but we can also be real about how the limitations in the technology when it comes to, as you said, cashiers not losing all their jobs because they forgot about the fact that some humans are social beings. We don't maybe want to talk to a cashier every day, but some days we might just want to have that interaction just because I want to get my coffee today. I want to talk to the barista. Yeah, that's a great thing. Sometimes I don't even feel like talking to them. So hand me the self-checkout line or let me order in advance so I can just grab my stuff and go. But again, it's varying. Different days call for different things and different times call for different situations. So yeah, thank you, Chris. That was great.
One little thing I came across this for a piece I wrote, I think, last year, but I'm going to forget the name. Wiener's laws are from the 80s. It was part of an aviation industry assessment of early automation in flying. And Wiener's laws are a bunch of these laws that went into a lot of aviation manuals to inform what automation and how automation would impact flying. And they're fascinatingly translatable to what we now think of as automation, or what we'd right now call artificial intelligence. And one of them that stands out that will seem obvious, but some of the intelligence dates back from these laws, is that automation tends to tune out small errors and leave us vulnerable to large errors. And that seems likely for a while we'll cease in where jobs change. The messiness, the friction, the bigger problems. So when, whatever reason, there's a problem at the checkout, you go over to the person still. We've all been there, the self-checkout, and like something won't scan or whatever. There's a bigger problem. And that's gonna, I think, happen in journalism, where a lot of the smaller stuff is gonna get tuned away. Like misspellings already have been trending away through automation. It's called spell check. And like style and syntax and context, a lot of a first generation editing thing has already been automated away. Those errors are rarer and rarer. So for as much as we dismiss reporting and editing, there are probably fewer spelling errors today than ever before because we automated away the small errors. But that means we're being left with the bigger errors. Total fraud, complete fabrication, way misaligned, completely wrong, it's only the biggest stuff, problems that we're coming to. The little stuff we're solving away. And that, I think, will show up in a lot of our work of what will be most likely to stay, not the small errors. We'll be left with the biggest errors to deal with.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chris. We can continue this conversation for another hour. This has been so insightful. This will not be the last time we're chatting on a recording or just working together. Thank you again, Chris, Allaire. This has been an awesome episode of Yall Working, from purpose down to the definition of an ecosystem, down to understanding how and you provide in this new environment. I'm so glad to be a part of this. My name is Michael Ogusanya. I'm your co-host of Yall Working.
I'm Allaire Jameson, and this has been a great episode with Christopher Wink. Thank you, Chris, for coming out today and talking to the people.
Michael.
Absolutely. And how can people get in touch with you? What's some things for people to look at on the radar?
So we're a news organization, so you should go to technical.ly. Technically, you should go to technical.ly/subscribe. We have newsletters for all the markets we're reporting daily in, and I write a weekly newsletter on ecosystem building or entrepreneurship-led growth and local tech economies. I also do a lot of nerd stuff there, so technical.ly/subscribe. Sign up for the Builders newsletter. I'm on the LinkedIn, and my email is just Chris, CHRIS @technical.ly, and love talking about this stuff. So talk to all of you soon. Thanks for the opportunity, guys.
Anytime. Peace out, everyone.
Bye.